All right. Welcome to another session of Authentic Selling Live, brought to you by Humantic AI. I'm Collin Mitchell. I'm the chief evangelist over here at Humantic, and I've got my man Mor Assouline on today. We wanted to talk about demos. That's a topic that we haven't covered yet, and I couldn't think of a better guest other than Mor from Demo to Close to come on for today's session. So, Mor, why don't you give folks a little bit of background about who you are and what you do over there at From Demo to Close?
Yep. It's a sales training coaching business focused on discovery, demo, follow up, and close. So once you actually learn how to get the lead on the hook through your prospecting, or if you're lucky, inbound leads, I teach you how to close them.
It's that simple, huh?
It's pretty simple once you figure out how to do it.
You,
The idea
you made
is
it.
the idea is you can close. You don't need more pipeline. Everyone thinks they need more pipeline, but if you know how to leverage your existing pipeline by giving jaw dropping demos, you're closing more leads with what you have already. And if you do that properly, then when the more leads do come in, then you can close those ones too. But I think I find a lot of salespeople don't know how to squeeze the juice out of their existing leads.
Yeah. It's a great point. I think that a lot of folks think that more leads is the solution, but actually effectively working the leads that you already have, gets you to the results, and then you can get more leads, right? Once you can actually manage the ones that you're already getting. So, just to
Yeah.
give everybody a quick agenda of today's session, we kind of talked about who is Mor, what is From Demo to Close. More going to break down sort of demos, do's and don'ts. Then we're going to talk a little bit about DISC and different personality types. And then we're also going to do some demo role plays. So we're going to pick some people that I think that, everybody here joining us today would be familiar with. And we're going to ask Mor some very specific questions around how he might personalize or customize a demo to that particular person after we review their personality profile today. So
Yeah.
Mor, break down just kind of your demo framework.
Without giving too much. Yeah.
No, man, give it all to us. Don't hold back.
No, so the demo framework is at a high level, a 30,000 foot view is before you do the demo, you need to do the discovery. And whether you're doing a disco demo on one call, or you're doing a discovery on a separate call and then scheduling the demo, you're going to prioritize the features that are corresponding to the highest priority problems. So let's say your product has like 50 features on it, and your typical demo is like you're just going to wow them by going through the dashboard, going through this feature, going through the settings, etc. Remove all that. It's going to be more a la carte versus a buffet. And you're going to say, all right, let me look at all those or all those problems that the prospect said. 4 problems. All right, what features in our product can solve those problems? And you're going to pick those features, and then you're only going to demo that first. If you do this properly, then the prospect is going to say or think, oh wow, that solves my problem in the shortest period of time. I trust more. Now once you've built that trust, you've earned the right to show the prospect other bells and whistles that you want to show them.
Yeah.
That is at a very, very high level. But the idea is the demo framework should really be focused on solving the problem. So Collin, you come to me, you say, hey, Mor, I have XYZ problem. Like, all right, Collin, you mentioned you have a problem here. Let me show you how to solve that. How does that look? Looks good. Fine. It works for you. Cool. You also mentioned you have this problem. Let me show you how to solve that. I show you how to solve it through our feature. Post feature, I'm going to ask you if that's a fit, if that's what you're expecting. And I'm doing this throughout the call. I'm telling the prospect why I'm showing them the feature before I show the feature, which is related to their pain point, challenge, goal. And then I'm showing them the feature. And then after I show them the feature, I get feedback to see if I'm in line with what they're looking for. And I'm micro closing throughout, essentially stacking up my close.
Yeah. All right. So I want to go back to the beginning here, right? Because this is all contingent on one very important piece of the puzzle: running a good discovery,
Mm-hmm.
right? Discovery is one of those things that I found is so challenging for a lot of sellers. And even sellers that maybe have been in the game for a while still drop the ball in discovery, myself included, right? So let's kind of, you broke down how to, customize the demo based on bringing it back to the pain or the problem that you're solving, rather for your prospect, and then tying it to the feature with these micro closes. So what are your thoughts on running a good discovery before you even get to the demo?
When you say what are your thoughts, are you referring to like what goes into a good discovery, or
Yes.
what is okay? You need to find out a handful of things. Number one, what's the actual problem that they're dealing with? Number two, how big is that problem on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being wow, this we need to take out this fire ASAP versus it's not so bad. It's not really a problem. We're just curious, where do they fall? Because if they fall on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can't really close them on organic urgency. When I say organic urgency on a demo, I'm talking about using like their timeline or their pain to drive urgency.
Hmm.
Artificial urgency is using discounts. So if their motivation is low, you can really only close them with using discounts and coupons. And so we have the problem, we have the size of the problem. We want to know also who's affected by that problem. Is it just that prospect that you're talking to, or other people in the department or other departments? And then the other thing is, when do they want to solve that problem by? That's your timeline, essentially.
Right. So, all right, awesome. Appreciate you breaking that down. Now, I want to touch something that I know there's a lot, you brought it up, and there's a lot of people that sit on different sides of the fence on this one. And I'm sure you probably already know what
Yeah.
it is. You mentioned whether you're running the disco and the demo separately or you're running the disco and the demo together. Do you have a preference or do you have any thoughts on when separating them versus not separating them makes sense?
Put it this way: if I had an hour, if you give me 45 minutes and I can spend that 45 minutes doing a demo for 30 minutes, or and like let's just say a disco for 15, or flip it upside down and spend 30 minutes on disco and 15 minutes on a demo, or 10 minutes on demo, I rather do the discovery. So the reason why I'm saying that is, depending on your sales cycle and the buyer persona, and like how many people are involved in the complexity of the deal, it's okay to do a disco demo on one call. In other scenarios, I've done it even in the SMB world and mid market world. You're on a discovery. The plan was to do a demo, but the discovery is going really well. You're vibing out. The prospect is giving you a ton of information. I'm not going to force a demo just because we've booked a demo. I'm going to milk as much of the discovery as I can. And on that discovery call, say, hey, listen, we may not have enough time to go through the rest of this and go through the demo. So would it be okay if we also scheduled a tailored demo after this call? So I'm setting up next steps in the beginning of the discovery. I'm not giving you a clear cut answer because there is no clear cut answer.
Yeah.
It really depends. But I think for SMB mid market, you can knock out a discovery and demo on one shot, and then if need be, you can always do a secondary demo or third demo to facilitate the sell. For complex sales, usually you'll do a discovery first, then you'll maybe do another discovery, and then one half of a demo, another half a demo. It really depends.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's a great answer because I think that there's for whatever reason there's people that are just totally against combining the two, and then there's some people that are all for it, and I think that there is no right answer. Like
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. Like it highly depends on what you do, how complex the sell is, all of those sort of things, and I mean, you got to find what works best in your business model, who you're selling to, and what you're selling, and what problem you're trying to solve, right?
yeah. I mean, one
Um,
thought is, if you the pros of combining a discovery and a demo, and I wrote a blog about this, is let's say you don't combine it, right? Let's say you're a lead, I don't combine it. We do a disco and a demo. Now I have 2 calls for every lead that comes through minimum. So that blocks out more of my calendar. But if I combine it, if I do a discovery and demo as 1 call, I have 1 call for every lead that comes in. I'm essentially opening up my calendar for more calls. But the moment I split that in two, I'm filling up my calendar with 2 calls for just one lead, less opportunity. That's another way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of combining it if you can, but you got to be really disciplined with your time as a seller, because it can be really easy if you're running, you're running the discovery to go to not leave enough time for demo, right? Or run out of time completely. And a lot of times these days, buyers come in hot and they're like, "All right, more, that's enough already with your damn questions. Like, just show me
Yeah.
the demo."
Yeah. Well, in that case, if you're seeing that, if you see that happen often, it's like a pattern. You're like, oh, I keep getting a prospect rushing me to the demo. Then that means you should change something. If it's an outlier, from meaning like from time to time you get someone doing that, don't sweat it. But if it's a consistent thing, what I'd recommend is position yourself in the beginning of the discovery where you get permission to ask all your questions without pissing off the prospect. And the way to do that is to set the objective, the tone for the call in the beginning. So, Colin, the goal of today's call is really for me to learn a little bit more about your challenges, see if we can help solve it. And if we can, great. If we can't, I'll refer you out. But I just have a couple more questions, if it's okay with you to understand. Is that okay? And once they say yes, I have permission to go through my discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So now I kind of want to jump in a little bit. What Humantic does is we provide sellers with personality insights to customize and personalize the entire sales process from discovery to demo to close. And so I just want to break down for people who maybe aren't familiar what DISC is and what personality traits these particular people have. And then I'm going to ask you some questions more about like how you could customize the demo, specifically knowing these types of things about your your buyers. So if you were going into a demo, and so for example, let's just get these slides prepped here. All right, so we're going to start with D-type, right? So D-type is a dominant person. They typically do not like small talk. They're very goal-oriented people, and they want to see how your solution aligns with their goals. Knowing that about a D-type, is there anything specific that you would tie in or focus in specifically on the demo more?
Yeah, so I'll add context here. If you're deciding to do a disco demo in this case, because I think it's important, but I probably would avoid rapport building on like personal stuff. I'd maybe rapport build more on business. I would definitely do an a la carte. I would definitely tailor the demo and be really tight about how I communicate. You said this. You mentioned earlier that this is important for you. Let me show you how to do that. Being like really explicit about it. Because you said here, show them how your solution aligns with their goals. So they want like the obvious. Tell me how exactly this solves my goal. So that's how I would do it. Like, hey, Colin, what I'm about to show you ties exactly into what you were saying earlier to me that you really wanted to see. Show the feature, done showing the feature. How does that align to your expectations? I'd be more tight, very like black and white, binary, checking off the list.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I think that a great point that you brought up there is tying it back, right? So doing a good discovery, finding out what their goals are, and then really tying it back and confirming. That's something that can be very effective with a D-type, and you hit the nail on the head. Avoid rapport building because it doesn't matter that much to D-type people. All right. So the next one we're going to look at is an I-type. So I-types, they really value relationships. Okay. So very different than the D-type. You want to avoid being perceived as being transactional because the minute that they feel that, hey, I'm just here for my commission, that's going to not go over very well. And in this case, small talk is recommended.
Yeah, in this case, what I would probably do is ask more open-ended questions throughout the demo. Ask not necessarily like, how does that align with your expectations, but asking them more like open-ended question for them to share stories with me versus me sharing the stories, get them to the talking. That's how I would recommend the small talk. I'd probably try to crack jokes throughout the time if there was a pocket of opportunity. And if you're showing pricing in this particular case, I would say something like, they don't like transactions, so that means they also like truth and honesty. And I would say something like, I don't know, I'm sort of giving you a high level here, but I would say something like, I'm not going to, I wouldn't pitch them on a higher plan if they don't, I don't think they need to be on a higher plan. And when I say that, I'd probably say something like, and Colin, it's not in my best interest to pitch you on a plan that isn't a fit for you because, this is a month-to-month, or this is a subscription-based software, and if you're not happy with it, you cancel and you leave me a bad review, and I have no interest in that. Yeah. So I would say stuff like that gets them to realize that, like, hey, I'm not in it for the money.
Yeah. So showing an I-type that that you value the relationship as much as they do over a bigger sale or earning a commission. Great way to win over an I-type. Rapport building, using humor, things like that. All really good ways to run a demo with an I-type. All right. So the next type that we're going to look at here is the S-type. So these are typically slower paced people. So creating some fake urgency, not going to go over well with them. Slower pace is recommended, and you really cannot be pushy with an S-type here. So any recommendations just based on this here? of how you might structure or do things a little bit differently with an S type.
Yeah, so on the actual demo itself, let's not talk about pricing for a minute. When you are going through the features, show them one feature at a time, ask them one question at a time, and before you move on to the next feature, I would recommend waiting minimum like 5 seconds before your next like talk track or question, giving them enough time to process what you said and let them sort of like think out loud. That's a big one in this particular case. In terms of don't be pushy, I would not make like when you're setting up next steps after the demo or trying to get them on a particular plan. I would not make. You should never make it about you, but it should always be about their timeline. Collin, you mentioned that your timeline is in March. Instead of saying like what you recommend doing, pose it as a question. Would you recommend it would be a bad idea for us to schedule a part 2 demo next week? This way, you have enough time to get onboarded with the rest of the team. I put it more of a question format versus like, here's what I recommend we do.
Yeah. I mean, every seller knows how important it is to get that next call on the call, right? But with an S type, I think you said the right thing there is, framing it up more, not being too pushy, not rushing them, letting them feel like they're making that choice, rather than just trying to shove that next meeting on their
Yeah.
calendar. All right. So moving on.
And I think you'll have a
Yeah.
mix of these on your calls. You may have a C type that comes in, but moments of the demo they're more dominant because they don't trust you yet, and then they'll switch over, and then they're really a C type in reality. It's very possible, or an I type.
Yeah. So, I mean, typically, people are not just one type, right? These are the 4 different quadrants of disc personality, but they're always going to be higher one than the other. So might have somebody who is a high DS, right? So there's going to be some things in both quadrants that are going to be important, but you need to consider, which one they're higher in, right? Because like a DS would be an interesting combo, right? Because D, they don't care too much about rapport building and relationships, and they want to get to the point. But then with an S, you also don't want to rush them. So even if you have like a DI, right? There's some things that are sort of conflicting there. So being intentional, like knowing this information going into these calls is super helpful. But you can also pick up and read things of like how they're responding throughout the conversation to see, these types of things showing up, throughout, the sales process, whether it's in discovery or in your demo as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a DI type, someone that's dominant and they like to build a relationship, then rapport building just to build rapport won't work. But you can build rapport. Usually, the dominant ones like to talk about themselves more, and so in that case, you can build rapport, but put the rapport on them, meaning ask a question that gets them to like share their story or whatever their situation.
Yeah, I love that example. All right, so now we're talking about the C type. For these, they're very detail oriented people. So being vague is not going to work, and they're really looking for expertise and not salesmanship. So break it down more. How would you customize the demo with a C type?
With a C type, I'd probably have a list of like common FAQs that come up on demos, and I'll bring it up on the demo, and I'll say something like, Collin, there's something here that you didn't ask me yet that is a common question that I see a lot of VPs of sales asking when I show them this. And then I'd bring up that question, so it shows that I'm aware of like what the industry and the title and the buyer persona is asking. So I would do that. I would ask a lot. I would bring up a lot of common FAQs throughout the call. Detailed in your approach. If you're talking about onboarding or what next steps looks like, I would recommend actually having a slide, one slide that is an onboarding slide that shows you exactly in bullet points what does onboarding look like, how long does it take, who's involved, how long are they involved, how long would it take, putting it in like detail and having them and sending that copy for them afterwards. Yeah, that's all right. 2 things I recommend.
All right. And any questions? We're gonna save some time for questions at the end, but we've covered quite a lot. If you have any questions, now is kind of a good point to throw them out before we start to move on to the next phase here. We're going to do some sort of breaking down how you would demo, how Mor would demo with specific people that we think you might be familiar with. And we're going to look at their personality and then ask some more questions about how he would customize the demo for those particular people. All right. So the first person that we are going to pull up, let me get this screen share fired up here, is Andy Paul. All right. So we're going to pull up Andy Paul's personality, and we're going to review it together. And we are going to break down how we would run a demo to Andy Paul. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So, Mor, you're familiar with Andy Paul?
I'm familiar. Can you zoom in? I can't. It's very small on mine.
Oh yeah. Let me see if we can make this a little bit bigger here.
I would open up LinkedIn, but they put me in timeout.
Oh yeah, Mor's in LinkedIn jail. All right. How's that? Can you see better?
Yeah, I'll just have to lean in a little bit.
All right, so I'll read this here if it's a little bit difficult to see on the screen, because the screen share with the live stream isn't always the most ideal here. All right, so Andy Paul, let's look at his personality. Andy is a DS type. All right, so we can see here he's high D S. All right, so what does that mean about Andy? Well, let's take a look. So he's a planner, an achiever. He's an output driven person. And let's take a look here. So if we were to be things to know about prospecting with Andy, ask them at the end. If they see a strong value prop in your product, expect an honest answer. Okay. Stick to your standard pitch and qualifying script. Don't try to wing it. During follow-ups, use phone or text if needed. They should be fine. So those are some things to think about when prospecting somebody that is like Andy Paul. Now, here's some things to avoid. Don't go over them unless they are left with no other option. Don't take their patience for granted. Avoid long-winded sermons. All right. Don't shy away from asking hard questions, but be extra polite. All right. And then we've got some, expectation setting here. So how fast or slow will Andy move? They will want to understand things well, but can move fast once they have a clear picture. And Andy's risk tolerance. Can Andy take some risk or not? They have a good risk tolerance, but are likely to think through once or twice. All right. So that's knowing all of that more and what we've already talked about already. How would you customize your demo if you were, say, demoing, I don't know, a B2B sales SaaS to Andy Paul?
Yeah. So based on this quick sort of like buyer persona review, two things that stand out immediately that I would definitely do with someone like this is when you are starting your demo, let's assume for a minute, I'll create some context that you've done a discovery first on a separate call and you're jumping on a demo. In that case, before you actually do the demo, I would share your discovery notes with them. And you can do that. I think, Collin, when I was on your podcast or you were on my podcast, you were talking about this, and I'm a big fan of it. Whatever discovery notes that you took, make sure it's really detailed. Share your screen and show them the notes while you're on the call. You can have it on a slide and make it all pretty, but I would definitely do that because then they see that you're taking them seriously and that you're organized. So one thing for sure I would do that. And someone like Andy's probably, as you're showing them features or whatever it is, they're probably thinking about, and they may not be explicit about it, but implementation, product adoption from their team, onboarding time, data migration. They have all these like fear, uncertainties, and doubt in their head, probably that they're not bringing up. I would proactively bring it up. Those are two things that stand out to me. Time to get onboarded, how it aligns with the other people in their department. I probably ask questions about Andy's department, like by my research. Hey, Andy, I noticed that Collin is also in your sales department. Like, what do you, based on this feature that I just showed you, do you think that would be helpful for him, or how do you think he would use it? I would ask more questions like that, getting them involved with other folks on his team. Let me see what we have here.
Yeah. So we've got also, negotiating with Andy Paul, right? The secret to closing fast with Andy is strong proof of impact,
Impact. Yeah.
and
Okay.
their conviction will matter the most. But they wouldn't want to act, um, you know, uh, uh, so basically what that's saying there is, you've really got to align your um, solution, the problem that you solve, with what Andy's goals are, and that's the
Yep.
only way that you're going to be able to negotiate with Andy and have some proof that you can actually deliver on that.
Yeah, I'd probably then in that case, there are two things that I would do. After you're showing a particular feature that solves a particular pain of Andy's, I would probably pull up some sort of case study, or like, it doesn't have to be like a whole paragraph essay format. Just find like a nice like case study, put it maybe into a nice like infographic, and then show that after the feature to validate that the feature actually works. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it's just your word against Andy's. Like, you're telling Andy, yeah, this is a great feature, but says who? Says you, the salesperson that's trying to close Andy. Better to bring up a case study that backs you up. And then the second thing I would do in that case is I'd maybe push for a free trial. Actually, um, uh, I would get Andy on a trial of your product so you can test it out for himself. And I'd use that language. I'd be like, Andy, I doubt you want to. You're probably not going to make a decision overnight, and then I don't expect you to, and you shouldn't. You want to know if this actually works for you. So why don't we do this? Why don't we set you up on a free trial? This way, you can see if Humantic actually solves those 4 challenges you had mentioned earlier on our call. Would that be a bad idea? I'd probably push for that.
Yeah, I love that. So, when you're basically aligning your solution with those problems, uh, using 2 ways to give proof, right? One, inserting customer success story, maybe how you solved something for somebody similar with a similar problem, and then also, getting him into a trial or a pilot to basically, see the proof for himself. So, I love that. Any questions around this? Again, we're looking at Andy Paul, and Andy's a DS type, so we're going to look at a couple others here, and then if anybody has any questions along the way, we'll answer those as well. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for a minute just while I get the next one ready here. Anything else you would add to running a demo with Andy Paul?
With Andy,
More?
I probably have in my back pocket a raving fan, and that is in a similar space or buying scenario as Andy, and use that as a testimonial or reference to share with Andy. I would say something to Andy like, "Hey, if you'd like, and I think it could be helpful, if I put you in touch with one of our customers that went through the exact same use case as you, would that be helpful?" And then I put them in touch.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. All right, so I'm pulling the next one up here, and I've got my 300 percent magnified screen here. So give me 1 second here. All right, so the next person here. Let me share my screen. Is John Barros. Familiar with
Cool.
John
Johnny
Barros
Moore.
more?
Yeah, I was just on his webinar the other day. He asked me to come in. So yeah.
All right, so I think most people in the audience will be familiar with John Barros. And John, let's look at John's personality. So John is a DI. Okay, so different variation here. Still high D like Andy Paul, but Andy was a DS, right? So John is high DI. All right. So breaking it down here, John's assertive, persuasive, and values relationships. I mean, you know John Moore. Does that sound like John?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So they're not against taking risk and can make tough decisions when required. They're more likely to accept new and exciting technologies. They prefer to ensure that they are in control of the situation. All right. So let's break down some things here. So here's some winning ways when prospecting into John or anybody that's a DI type. Keep your pitch focused on the impact, but nurture the relationship too, right? because it's an interesting combo here. Address your competition clearly and confidently. Showcase existing customers and use case studies to grab their attention. Okay, so these are things that are going to move the needle with somebody like John or any DI type that you're selling into. Now, it's important also to know some things to avoid. All right, so these are some things that you want to, some traps you want to avoid, or landmines when selling into somebody like John or a DI type. Don't hesitate from asking them how they truly feel about your product. Don't hesitate from asking questions or pushing them, but take a friendly approach. Do not look like someone who doesn't know what they are talking about. All right, so let's kind of stop there. Based on this information that you now know about John, how would you approach a demo with John? What
Yeah.
would you do differently than, what you would have, some of the suggestions you made about doing a demo to Andy?
Yeah, for sure. So as you open this up, I already know, like I've talked to John, so I know how he is, but and so it just validated what I already knew. But one of the first things I wrote in my little notepad here is ask John difficult questions on a demo. Don't ask him the generic questions. Ask them a question that makes them like stop and think. If they give you an answer and that answer sort of leans away from moving forward with your product or your feature, whatever it is, challenge them on it. But before you challenge them on it, don't like rush it. Like think about what they just said. Embrace quietness, like silence for like a few seconds, and then potentially challenge them on what they said. And you just simply say something like, "Hey, John, can I challenge you on something that you said earlier on?" You can say stuff like that. They'll respect you for it. I would avoid using any buzzwords or sounding like templated talk tracks. I've been on demos with very well-known companies in the B2B SaaS space, and you can tell they've taken something from Medic or Bant or whatever, and it sounds like, so avoid
or they're
that crap.
just following a playbook of questions,
Yeah, avoid it. If you have a case study, I've seen some reps show case studies first and then show the feature to like build up the value. Don't do that. Show the feature first, then back it up with a case study. Avoid any, like they talk about, like people talk about like storytelling on demos. Probably avoid long stories. I'd get to the punchline. So I would say something like, "Hey, John, there's a similar customer. I'll spare you the long story, but the long story short is," and get to the punchline.
Yeah. That's an important piece there, right? Because I think sellers often do this. Like when you're customizing what it is you're doing, and we're talking about specifically the demo, right? Is you have to label why you're doing that, right? Like you have to say, "Hey, I'll spare you the long story," and then give them the short version, because they're gonna you're basically showing them that you understand them at a level that they don't want the long story, right?
They don't want it. Yeah.
So that's an important piece there that I think people need to not skip over, is actually calling that stuff out.
Yeah. And if they ask you a question you don't know the answer to, don't bullshit it. I'd probably say something like, "That's a great question. Is it okay if I get back to you on that one?" And don't, versus like giving them like a half-ass answer. Because they may if you give them a half-ass answer, they'll probably say something like, "Gotcha, okay," and they're like, this guy in their head, this guy has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, and the problem with that is then most of anything that you say after that, they're sort of checked out, or they are already to the point where they don't trust what you're saying. So even if same thing when you mention if you don't have the answer to something, right? And you say, "Hey, I need to get back to you on that," right? Calling that out. So I think that that's an important piece, because if you take one misstep, then it could discredit everything that you do after that.
Yeah, I think the big one for John that just like it's like screaming mine. It's on my brain, just like with a big billboard, is challenge him, ask difficult questions. Those two really pop out for me.
Yeah. And so the secret to closing fast with John, or any I forgot here. So yeah. Okay. So Andy was a DS, John is a DI. Okay. So the secret to, if we go down here, the secret to closing fast with John is relationship and product conviction, conviction matter equally. Okay, so that's an interesting piece there, is relationships and product conviction matter equally, followed by a sense of achievement. All right. And then this is also an important one because this is something that sellers struggle with a lot is, will you ever get a clear answer from John, right? Lots of prospects hate telling you no. If they're not convinced, they will say no, but they will say it in a friendly way. So, difference there with John versus Andy is Andy can say no. Somebody like Andy could say no, but you may have to prompt him, and you might have to say something like, "Hey, totally understand if this is not a fit, and if any point you feel that way, just let me know." And if you get to a point in the demo or in the sales process where you're feeling like things just are not moving in a positive direction, that's when you would need to bring that back up and say that. Where somebody like John might just flat out tell you, "Hey, Mor, thanks so much for your time, but this is just not for me."
He would say that.
All right, so let's see. We have a question from Saad here. What if the selling type is really relationship, eye heavy? A good framework to be more precise. So, if your selling style is more relationship type, it's going to be a challenge for you to not want to focus on small talk and rapport building and relationships. That will be challenging for any seller that's their natural selling style, because sellers are always going to fall back to their natural tendencies. They're going to sell the way that they would buy if they're on the other side of the table, if they're a buyer. So it will require you to really, challenge yourself and get outside of your comfort zone. But being, the first step in really adopting selling this way throughout your entire sales process is to know yourself first, right? So that could mean, hey, you download Humantic, you run your own profile, and you start to understand yourself better. So you start to know what your natural tendencies are. And then I'd say, the easiest way to sort of bite-size some of this stuff is just kind of start with the things that you need to avoid with certain people, like D-type, small talk, things like that. I types, being transactional. So relationships are going to be more important. So knowing the small little nuances of what you should avoid with each type of person, I think is a really good place to start. So, all right. So I want to throw a bit of a wild card out there. More either is there somebody that you would love for us to pull up and we can break down their profile and talk about how we would demo to them, or even maybe into the audience? Is there anybody that you would love to for us to pull up, and we can break down their profile and how we would demo to them?
So if the audience doesn't answer, we'll wait on that. If the audience doesn't answer, the person that I'd like you to pull up, which you're going to find funny, would be me, because I want to know how accurate it is.
All right. That's typically people want to see their own profile first. That's always, I'm not surprised by the answer. So if the audience doesn't jump in here and give us somebody that they want to look up or agree that we should pull Mor's profile up, and then Mor can tell us how he would demo to himself. Anybody in the audience have anything for us? All right. So if nobody's going to jump in,
Audience is hopping today, huh?
Yeah. It's kind of quiet. All right, let's. It's so weird looking at this like 300% screen.
That's
sorry. Mor's in LinkedIn jail. You can't
I'm
see
in
his profile. Does this
It doesn't
profile
let
look familiar?
It doesn't even let you search it. Oh man, that's horrible.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so at least we're 100% confident that this is Mor, so that's always good. All right, so let's see. Mor is a DS type, so you're same as Andy Paul, same personality as Andy Paul. So direct and assertive, early adopter, objective evaluator. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, it does actually.
All right, so same we're going to see same stuff here as Andy Paul, right? Use phrases like your team deserves, best in class, focus on results that your product produces, expect some strategic questions in return, ask them at the end if they see a strong value prop in your product, expect an honest answer.
Yep, 100%.
Things not to do with Mor if you're prospecting into Mor, which now everybody has the playbook to prospect into you. Avoid putting conscious effort into relationship building. Don't go over them unless you are left with no other option. So basically what that means, a lot of times people get to sort of mid-level influencer type person, maybe they're not getting any traction and they might try to go above them. If you do something like that with somebody like Mor, or even somebody with similar personality type, it's not going to go over very well. And it's saying, don't do it unless you literally have no other option, last resort. Okay. Don't shy away from asking hard questions, but be extra polite.
Accurate. Yeah.
All right. Secret to closing with Mor: strong proof of impact in their conviction will matter the most.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't want to act. Okay. So basically, and then this is always an interesting one. I always love this one. Will you ever get a clear answer from Mor? They will say no if they are not convinced, but you will have to prompt them.
Potentially. Depends. I'm
Yeah,
usually a
no.
very good, because I'm also in sales. When I get on sales calls, the first thing I say to the like salesperson, like, I'll be the easiest prospect that you'll ever deal with because I'll tell you everything you need to know. But that's just because I'm in sales. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anybody else that you would like us to pull up other than your sophomore?
Let me think. Put up, you know what? Yeah, put this guy up. Josh Braun.
Ah, okay. This will be fun. Josh Braun. All right. So anybody
Joshy.
prospecting into Josh Braun? Let's see. All right. So Josh is a DI. Same as John Barros. Yeah, there's a trend here. Typically, successful people in sales leaders, you're going to see a lot of high D variations of high D, right? So DI, DS, very common, right? If we went into, a different segment of types of people, then we might see some different, very different variations. But yeah, same profile, same type. Which is kind of fun here because we did Andy and then you and Andy Mor had the same type, and then we did John Barros and him and Josh have the same type. So, but let's see, informal, values relationship, friendly but fast. So they're more likely to accept new and exciting technologies. They prefer to ensure that they're in control of the situation. A combination of speed and relationship gets the best response from them. What do you think? Are you prospecting into Josh Braun?
I'm not, no, but but I value
right.
Josh Braun's like opinion and thought leadership. So I'm just curious how you would react. And I've talked to Josh Braun, so I know how he thinks. I think I know how he thinks. But
well, you do now.
I do now.
You do now. All right. So we've got let's see. We've got somebody dropping a link in here for us to pull it up.
It's the person that was missing the soccer game.
Oh yeah, we must have. This must have been worthwhile if you're still sticking around missing the soccer game, right? Is okay. Looks like that's his own profile, right? So let's see if we can pull that up. Because in the StreamYard chat, it doesn't really allow me to grab it. So let's see if, all right, I'm probably just gonna have to type it out here. All right, so MBAQQIL. That's right. Ah, that didn't work. What happened? Hold on, let's see here. Let's try that one more time. So MBA. That link's not working. Let's see if I can search it. All right, there we go. All right. I don't know why the search wasn't working when I was putting that in. All right, let's see your personality. Since you hung out with us, since you skipped the list, watching your favorite soccer game to learn how to run better demos. All right, so this is an I type. All right, something different here. It's going to be interesting. All right, so consensus focused, story driven, amiable, and agreeable. All right, so unlike let's scroll this up a little bit so everybody can see it. Unlike the D or C type, they're convinced more by stories and testimonials. They agree with others often, so exercise cautious when relying on their word. They are more about building relationships than just cutting deals. So high I type. Any thoughts on how you would structure, how you would customize
Yeah.
a demo with a high I type like this?
Yeah, I'd probably inject a lot of FOMO type of talk tracks on the demo. So fear of missing out, and using an audience that relates to them. So I'd be like, like maybe if they have a competitor of theirs, I'd bring up like how the competitor is doing really well with our product, and talk about that. And they're like, oh crap, like that's fear of missing out, and look at the competitor. We deal with them every day, and they're doing really well. I'm sort of convinced. I'd probably do a lot of that.
Anything else? Let's see.
Uh,
Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so prospecting into an I type. Do this to build a winning connection. Ask them how their day is going. Exchange for some pleasantries. So small talk. Small talk is the winning mantra here with an I type. Refer to interesting customer testimonials. Right. Just like you said, more. And stress on great customer experiences.
yeah,
Speak from experience about success that the product has seen with other customers, right? So
yeah,
customer success stories, rapport building, relationships matter a lot. All right. So also, just as important is to know, what to do with these I types. Also, what not to do. All right. So don't be formal with them. They trust informality more, right? So very casual, you're talking to a friend, right? Um, with and that can go with the right person, that goes well. With the wrong person, that goes very
yeah. I'd
poorly.
probably
So
compliment them a lot. I'd find ways to
yeah,
compliment them on the call. I wouldn't do that with everybody.
yeah, because other types would think it's not very genuine.
Right.
Where with an I type it would work really well, assuming that it was genuine, right? But even if it was
Yeah.
genuine with other types, they're not going to take it very well. They're going to think, oh, you're just trying to build rapport with me, right? So don't be excessively objective. Be like a storyteller with them. Don't push them for a direct no. Take lack of yes as a no after some time. So with this type, like you're never gonna get a no. This is that prospect that disco went well, demo went well, and the deal is just not moving, and it's just because they value relationships so much. They don't want to let you down, and they don't want to tell you no. They're never going to tell you no. So
I'd
after,
probably then, in that
yeah,
case, I'd probably, like, when I'm asking them for a yes or a no, I'd probably say something like, at the end of like my question that wants them to say yes or no, I'd say something like, and feel very comfortable to say no thanks. I would make it really easy for them to say no.
yeah.
Uh,
Problem is, even if you did that, they still wouldn't tell you no.
Maybe you tell me, man. Who I don't know how to pronounce your name, MD. You tell me,
MD.
MD.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't say no to come into this live session.
That's
You got the invite and you had to show up because even though your favorite soccer team was playing, right? All right. So, we've got a little bit of time left. We can open up for some questions. We can run a couple more profiles. If anybody else has a profile they'd like us to run, even if it's your own profile, drop us a comment here. Maybe for fun, since
Let's see.
Assad has been hanging out with us, we can just pull up his profile. And now everybody's going to know how to prospect to you. So why not? All right. Here we go.
Saad needs. Does he have a LinkedIn banner? Because it looks like it's missing.
Yeah. Well, he's non-confrontational, optimistic, and story-driven. All right. So Saad is also an I type. All right. So, but you can see, high I, S as well, not so much C. So they're more about building relationships than just cutting deals. So another I type. So we're going to see a lot of they probably won't say no directly. Never get a clear answer. All right. So without
at one
that,
point, with
yeah,
someone like Saad, at one point, if I'm prospecting them, at one point, because if you don't, they won't say no, and if you don't, if then that deal just may drag out, it'll just be like a sort of like a stinky salamis, just sort of like hanging out there. I'd probably insert some sort of deadline urgency at some point, just to force it to make it market as a deal lost.
yeah,
I'd probably do it somewhere down the funnel.
yeah. I think that's a great idea. So there's a few people. There's a few people in the audience here that have made some comments. Do my profile, pick mine. For whatever reason, sometimes with StreamYard, which is what we use to live stream these, I can't see your actual profile. It just tells me that you're a LinkedIn user. So maybe you're hanging out in LinkedIn jail like Mor. But if you want me to, if you want us to pull up your profile, if you could just drop your URL in the chat, that will be the easiest way for me to be able to pull your profile up. Because I think if we're not connected for whatever reason, I can't see who you are. So anybody that wants us, oh wow, that's we are connected and I know who you are, but StreamYard is just referring to you as a LinkedIn user.
Is Leslie on here?
Yeah, so we've got Leslie.
I can't see. I'm in LinkedIn jail.
All right, so Leslie is a DS type. All right, so we've seen this profile before. Again, lots of high D types. I'm not surprised with some of the profiles that we've picked here. But just for anybody, stream, yeah, thanks StreamYard. All right, so let's break it down. So dynamic but sincere, planner, achiever, long-term thinker. So they might take some time to make their mind up, but once they do, they don't change it easily. Reading between the lines and seeing beyond your words comes naturally to them. They exhibit a rare combination of being result-oriented but patient at the same time. So, Mor, how would you customize the demo for Leslie?
They'd be one hell of a champion, I feel.
Yeah.
Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't see you because I'm in jail, but how would I? But I need some more information here, though.
All right. So you can spend time on BANT or other qualification methodology, but keep it to the point. All right. Ask them at the end if they see a strong value prop in your product. Expect an honest answer. Okay. That's important because with some types, you're just not going to get that.
I would do that part. The middle one, ask them at the end. I would do that not only at the end, but throughout the demo, because it's important that, correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but it's important that you feel like someone, I mean, this is sort of like a general statement, but values your opinion. And so I would ask your opinion throughout the call on what I just showed you. And if I'm setting up next step, I would probably say something like, Leslie, I have an idea, but I want to get your opinion because I think you would know more. I would say something like that because I think you would value that. I go hard for folks once I believe in them.
Yeah. So you were saying that Leslie would be one heck of a champion.
She'd be a hell of a champion.
And Leslie, aka LinkedIn user, agrees with your assessment.
Leslie, are you in LinkedIn jail too? What's going on here?
Sounds like a couple of meetings. All right, so we got some other people jumping in here. So sounds like a couple of meetings, not to be pushy, providing long-term value on each meeting. Yeah, well said. All right, so let's talk about what not to do with Leslie. All right. Don't do this or you will lose their confidence. Don't get into pricing discussions early on. Steer conversation towards proven results. Don't go over them unless you are left with no other options, right? So we've seen this before. Avoid putting conscious effort into relationship building. So it's not necessarily that relationship.
Sorry, I cut you off. I'm all over the place. I'm on LinkedIn jail. I can do whatever I want.
It all makes sense now. We all know why you're in LinkedIn jail with that
harassing everyone.
So, avoid putting conscious effort into building relationships. So, and some of this stuff is like, it's not saying that like Leslie doesn't value relationships. It's just that there's other things that are priority when doing business. And relationships isn't a driver necessarily for doing business, right?
Yeah.
And then, so here's some things for setting expectations with Leslie. How fast or slow will Leslie move? They will want to understand. They will want to understand things well, but can move fast once they have a clear picture. Okay. Can they take some risk or not? They have good risk tolerance, but are likely to think through once or twice. So based on that, how would you customize things knowing these things about Leslie, or AKA LinkedIn user?
Knowing that Leslie, aka LinkedIn user, would be a great champion, it also means a great champion cares about their team and the other departments. So the demo would not only be about pitching the value of the feature or whatever it is to Leslie, but also to her team, impacting her team. And I'd use that a lot. And I think Leslie would agree that would work. And the only time I would actually bring up price early on with Leslie is if I contextualize it. So instead of saying like, "Hey Leslie, I typically don't bring up price, but you had mentioned you're 100%, I would definitely appreciate those type of exactly." The only time I bring up price early on is if Leslie at all indicated through a pre-email. It's hilarious.
We even know the personality of the infamous
random
LinkedIn
user.
Yeah.
I probably see something like, Leslie, based on our conversation and like early or your email, I typically don't show pricing, but I feel like you would want to see it early on because you had mentioned that your team has used this something like this in the past, and so they're a little sensitive to the pricing. So would it be okay with you if I showed you pricing first and you let me know if that works? I would use it in that context, and I think Leslie would agree it would work, aka LinkedIn user.
Yeah. I mean, how many more times do you think we can say LinkedIn user before we finish here? Is there any more LinkedIn users out there that would like us to run their profile? All right, so we've ran quite a few profiles. Some of them are fairly similar, but some differences here. We hope that this session was helpful to everybody who's joined us. Anybody have any final questions? We have a few minutes left, or if there isn't any questions, we'll give you a few minutes back of your life, and you could go watch soccer, or you could go hang out in LinkedIn jail with Mor, or whatever.
But if you go watch soccer, don't complain you're not hitting quota. So.
Any questions? No questions? All right. Thank you, everybody who showed up, everybody who hung out with us today. Really, really appreciate it. And let's see here. I've got, if anybody is curious about learning more about this type of stuff, wants to run their own profile, or start to use this in your sales process, all you have to do is go over to Humantic.ai. You can download a free trial. This is the Chrome extension. It's super easy to install, and you can start using this on your stuck deals or using it to prospect better. But you can check it out for yourself. Thank you, Mor, for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Gracias.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got to actually hang out in LinkedIn in LinkedIn jail.
Yeah.
You kind of bucked the system a little bit.
I did, yeah. But you're an accomplice now.